Mark Twain said that if you've got to swallow a frog, swallow it first thing in the morning. And if you have to swallow two, swallow the biggest one first. So apparently after yesterday's video, I need to swallow a couple of frogs. So let me kind of go over with you just real quick. Yesterday I talked about you needed to use, you always need to count the roles of, consider the roles of attention, motivation, and cognition whenever you're training your dog. And in the process of talking about motivation, I happened to brush, kind of like flying close to the sun, an extremely hot topic known as methodology in the dog training world. Oh my gosh, probably one of the most contested topics that you could ever touch on. There have been entire books written about it, blogs written about it, articles written about it, debates held on it. In other words, there are people who like to profess that training a dog is only necessary if you ignore bad behavior and you reward good behavior. Well, yep, they're right. That does work, but it only works under certain contexts, under certain training goals that you have with your dog. For example, when I trained Captain to roll over or to jump up into my arms, I honestly didn't care if he did it or not. It was way cool if he did, but there's many times in which he wouldn't do it. And it'd only be embarrassing if he didn't do it and I was sitting there bragging about it to everybody that I know. But he didn't. So there were times that he would, and I was on TV more than a few times, and I'd get him to say, hey, climb into my arms, man, jump into my arms. And sure enough, right there in front of the whole wide world, nothing. But you know what? I don't care. I don't care. It's part of it. I only used a reward to get him to do it. I never corrected him if he didn't do it. Who cares? Training methodologies should be surrounded by one thing, should be centered on one focus. What's your goal? What is your goal? When Captain was being trained to come to me when I called him, to not pull me, to not get on my stove like you saw in yesterday's video with the other dog, to not chew up on my furniture, to not bite anyone. Yes, I did correct him for making undesired decisions, for behaviors that I knew were going to have to achieve some level of reliability. And by doing that, wow, we now have an incredible life together because I have no problem. I never really walk with him with a leash unless I'm respecting someone's leash law. I can take him off leash anywhere I want to go. I can go on hikes into the forest. I can throw the ball for him. I can do anything. I don't have to have a leash. I can tell him to stay. I can tell him the place. As you guys have seen him on the video, man, he's got a wonderful attitude. Life is really great for him because I always kept this in mind. Again, those three roles: attention, motivation, cognition. You know, our dog's brain, like it or not, is biologically driven to learn what it needs to survive. Now, as simple as that. It just simply needs to learn what it needs to survive. And when we keep things simple, that's us. That's us in a nutshell. It really is. Just at the end of the day, we learn what we need in order to survive. You know, I pointed out yesterday, for a wild animal, I need food, I need mate, I need a safe dwelling place for my offspring. Okay, so with our dogs all being neutered and spayed and everything else, what do they need? Well, they need food. Everyone needs food. They need safety. That's why I talk about the threat zone and the critical zone. They need safety. They need distance from possible threats. I talked about status. There are hierarchies, whether you like to believe it or not. They're there. And therefore, I need status in that hierarchy. It behooves me to be as high up in that status as possible. It's all about the rules of evolutionary stable strategies and things of that sort there, the evolutionary rule of mind, the law of limited resources, so on and so forth. The principle of resemblance, that's why it's there. My status compared to your status. Yeah, there's everything that they do. Jumping. Why am I jumping? Because I want food. Why do I bark at you? Because I want food. Why do I chase the ball? Because that's prey instinct. I'm thinking about food. Why did Vesper find the toy in the orange cones? Because it's hunt drive. I'm thinking about food. So when we get down to the bigger question, when people ask me all the time, well, the advice that I got from my previous trainer or the advice I got from my family says I shouldn't correct my dog. Well, yeah, it boils down to don't. If you don't care what your dog does, as long as it doesn't affect everyone else out there in the whole wide world, then don't. But do know this, life will, and I did point that out there yesterday, it will correct your dog. Because see, cost benefit, just to go over that one last time, is when your dog's on its way to learning what it needs to survive and acquiring those things that it needs to survive. Cost benefit is just a mere consequence of its journey along the acquisition trail of all those things that it needs. It will happen. It's called cause and effect. So therefore, anyone who points out that you should never correct your dog, and yet you feel that you want to, you feel that you really don't want to ignore the fact that your dog's chewing on your furniture, you really don't want to ignore that your dogs are jumping on your guest, and you really do want your dog to come back to you, well, you guys, you're smart enough. I don't need to sit here early on a Sunday morning swallowing the frog for you so that you get this. Because you grew up on the planet Earth. Yeah, you got corrected, I guarantee you did. And we all learned from it. I remember Kira and I raising our kids. I cannot tell you how many times we say to them, you're not going to like this, but I'm doing it because I'm going to save you from yourself. And really what that was in essence was, you made a mistake. So here comes a correction. But guess what? It's a small correction compared to the one that life's going to give you if you continue down the road to making those same mistakes. We get it. You tell a kid, hey, I need you to make really good grades. You don't understand why right now, but later on when you apply for college, you're kind of going to get it, that you need to have these good grades. But you're not seeing that right now because you don't see down the road. You're only seeing what's happening in front of you today. So we tell them you have to bring home really good grades. Well, if they bring home bad grades, if we just ignore it, okay, think that's going to change? Why would it change? Life, has motivators. Life has its own methodology. And when you apply any sort of a cost in training, I am going to show you how to get that thing done because there are rules. You try to never use more than what's just necessary to stop the undesired behavior and promote desire. You also make sure that the dog can associate the correction with its behavior. If you don't do that, you create confusion, and confusion creates fear. So there's a lot of rules, but at the end of the day, there is no one methodology for training a dog. There is none. And don't let anyone tell you that there is. It all depends on what you're trying to accomplish with your dog. At the end of the day, you don't care if the dog does it or not. No corrections necessary. Just sit back and watch life. Your life will do all the corrections for you. Do you want to spare your dog of a really harmful correction, though, that life can hand it? Like I always say, life is the master teacher, but sometimes her fees can be really high. Then step in and say, hey, I love you, dog, but you're living in my human world. And I get in your dog world. I get in your wolf world, jumping up and licking people in the face. May give me cause to regurgitate part of my breakfast, but that doesn't happen out here in the human world. It may to a dog, but it doesn't happen here. And I understand that chasing a squirrel or running down the street and exploring all the distant counties from here could be a grand thing for you, but it causes me a lot of angst and a lot of worry because I don't know if you're going to find your way home. And also, if you wander in front of a car, I worry about that driver now swerving its vehicle to avoid hitting you, possibly hitting someone else. So we have boundaries and rules in this world. And if we want the dog to respond reliably to any input that we give them, I give you command, you do, and that's the end of it. Trust me on it. I'm going to save you from yourself, dog. And yeah, you've got to come up with a motivator. And by golly, if you can get that thing done with a dog biscuit, remember it does want food, great. That's awesome. But if you can't, Well, then be ready to give the dog another reason why it needs to come to you. In case today it says, you know, I'm just not feeling the dog biscuit today. I'd much rather remain out here and doing what I'm doing. So be ready to step in and go, kind of get that, but you need to come back here, right now. I'll be guiding you all the way. Don't worry about it. Every time I show you how to train a behavior, I'll show you how to apply a cost if it's necessary. It's no big deal. People make it to be way too big of a deal than what it is. They make it into this big, gigantic frog that everyone has to swallow all the time. My way or the highway. Yep, that's the way it is out there. Anytime you ask about training methodologies, my way or the highway. Well, I remember one time I was driving, my wife, Kara, called me and says, you know, Bryan, be careful, because on the news they just reported there's some guy driving down the highway the wrong way. And I replied back, there's more than one of them. All right, he had to get up early to get that one. Okay, guys, that's it. I swallowed my frog. So when it comes down to training methodologies, here's Bryan's stance on it. Whatever works, baby. Whatever works. All positive? Awesome. Got to correct the dog? Yeah, let's do it. Just make sure we do it right. And everything's going to be great. See you guys tomorrow. Enjoy your Sunday.